Hello
First,
everyone. My name is Rahul Madik. I'm the chair of IEEE SPS Signature Society, Student Branch IIT Kharagpur. Welcome to IEEE SPS Society for today's talk. And I request all the participants to kindly mute themselves, and we'll be having a Q&A session after the end of the talk. So please post your questions if you have any in the chat box. I request Kasturi Barik to kindly welcome the speaker and introduce same. Over to you,
okay.
Kasturi.
First of all, thank you, Lily, for accepting our invitation and give the talk in our IEEE SPS student branch. And welcome all the audience too. So, Dr. Lily Chamkura is currently a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Neuroscience, Baylor College of Medicine, Houston, working with Dr. Scott Pitko. She completed her PhD from Department of ENEC, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, under the guidance of Professor Gautam Shah. She defended her thesis on the topic feature and kernel selection via intense voting application to classification of brain networks in this September 2021. She completed her BTech degree in Electronics and Communication Engineering from DITM University, Visakhapatnam during 2008 to 2012. She obtained her MTech degree in Digital Signal Processing from Department of Avionics, Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology in 2014. Her master's dissertation was on the topic channel estimation of non-sample space channel in OFDM system, completed under the supervision of Dr. R. Lakshminarayanan. Her current research interest includes dynamical systems, neurosignal processing, analysis of spatio-temporal complex networks, and graph machine learning. Again, I am welcoming Lily to start this talk.
Thank you, Kasturi. Thank you for having me here. A very good evening, everyone. Uh, the topic for my presentation today is on instance voting approach to feature selection. This work was done during my PhD at IIT Kharagpur. Let's get started. This is a brief outline of today's session. In the traditional pattern recognition framework, we extract features from data samples and use those features for training a classifier. And any test instance is also evaluated from the same extracted features, and the classification label is determined. Often it's not immediately obvious which features to use, and it requires domain knowledge in computing the features. And however, when we do not know which features to extract, the common procedure is to extract many different features or that capture different information from the data and then use them for training. But the more the better is not always a true. It's not always a true thing, and a large number of features could deteriorate the classification performance because of the curse of dimensionality. This is where feature selection comes into play, which refers to selecting a subset of features relevant for classification while discarding the irrelevant ones. As I mentioned, here we are considering supervised feature selection, that is, we know the class labels of the training data. The need for feature selection, it's twofold. One is that the presence of irrelevant features could lead to model overfitting and in turn deteriorate the classification performance. On the other hand, redundant features do not contribute to anything to the classification, but they increase the model complexity. Moreover, feature selection can aid in the interpretability and also the process of knowledge discovery in many applications. Here, our goal is to select a relevant and non-redundant subset of features from the input feature set. This feature selection finds applications in a wide variety of domains, including bioinformatics and neuroscience. The problem that is of specific interest to us is the low sample size high-dimensional data, which is often the case, which often arises in problems such as neuroscience, which is associated with some specific set of challenges. These include, like, it's difficult to infer the feature relevance from the small number of instances. Moreover, a large proportion of the irrelevant and redundant features can mask the useful ones. It's also desired that the selected features are stable with respect to data variations, which is especially crucial for interpretation of features. Moreover, the computation should not be probative. Just to provide the context for where the proposed approach belongs, we have different types of feature selection techniques based on the selection strategy. Depending on whether or not the feature selection works in conjunction with the classifier, they can be grouped under filter, wrapper, or embedded approaches. So filter approaches are independent of the classifier and they rank features according to a relevance criterion. On the other hand, wrapper methods evaluate the performance of various subsets of features using a pre-specified classifier, and they are often known to yield optimal feature subsets for that particular classifier. Embedded approaches integrate feature selection into the classification framework by imposing, for example, sparsity constraints, as in the case of lasso. Here, our focus is on filter approaches, which are computationally fast. They're easier to interpret because of the relevance criterion that they have, and they're also classifier independent, which is designed for the applications that we are considering. Another grouping criterion is based on whether or not the feature relevance is evaluated individually or whether they take other features into context. So univariate approaches evaluate the relevance individually, while multivariate features take other features into context. The advantage of multivariate approaches over univariate ones is that they can address redundancy issues. Without going into the details of existing state-of-the-art, the state-of-the-art approaches are based on mutual information. So one of the main drawbacks is that they are dependent on probability estimates and in turn sensitive to sample size. Hence, spurious estimates of relevance can lead to the selection of irrelevant features. To circumvent this problem, graph-based approaches avoid the estimation of explicit probability densities, but consider the graph representation of data. But when selecting relevant features and avoiding the redundant ones, they involve a lot of pairwise graph comparisons, which leads to a high computational cost. The proposed approach is motivated by the graph-based approaches because they can capture the intrinsic structure of the data. Moreover, the graph representation of the data provides smoothing of the noise arising due to a small sample size as well as any data perturbations. In order to address the drawback of these pairwise graph comparisons, we summarize the graph as a vector of instance roots, which will be seen in detail later. Coming to the proposed approach, it is performed in two main steps. Like I mentioned, first we have the graph representation of the data and the computation of instance roots. And second, employing these instance roots into a search strategy to perform feature selection. Let us look at the instance routing scheme. So this figure motivates the instance routing scheme. So for any given feature, it is relevant for a subset of the instances and irrelevant for some of them. For example, if you consider the instance x1 here, which lies in the overlap region of the two features, both the features are irrelevant for classifying that particular instance. But on the other hand, for the instance x2 here,
Lilith, hello.
Hello.
Sorry
yes.
for interruption. Can you just click on that hide option, because that figure is kind of
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, on the other hand, for the instance X2, we can see that the feature F1 is relevant. It lies in the overlap region of feature 1, but F2 is relevant for classifying this particular feature. So, there is a kind of a local relevance associated with each feature with respect to the instances. So, this is what we want to capitalize on in order to perform feature selection. So this is the overview of the instance voting scheme. Essentially, we have the feature matrix of m instances and n number of features. So we represent each feature as a graph. That is, every column of this feature matrix as a graph. So the nodes of the graphs corresponds to the instances, and the edge weights quantify the proximity between those instances for that particular feature. The idea is that graph features that are useful for classification result in clustered graphs. On the other hand, those that are not useful or irrelevant do not have any such structure. Moreover, if we consider again the local perspective like we were doing earlier, so nodes are nothing but instances here. So the nodes that are heavily connected within classes but sparsely connected between classes, like this node here, are better classified by that particular feature. So the voting matrix essentially is like a representation of this particular thing, that every node has a graph neighborhood, and by looking at its graph neighborhood, we can say whether or not a particular feature is useful for classification of that particular instance. Also, please feel free to stop me at any point if you have any questions. Okay, let's go into the mathematics of the instance voting scheme. So we construct graphs for all the features. Like I said, the nodes are the data points, and the edges are the pairwise proximity. So in order to represent the edge weights, we use the Gaussian kernel. So that is just basically the function that we have here. We are not considering any self edges. That is, we are considering like simple graphs where there are connections between nodes, but not from a node to itself. The parameter sigma in this Gaussian kernel modulates the edge weight decay with respect to distance. Next, the idea here is to quantify the clustering structure of the graphs. For this purpose, we use the modularity measure that was originally developed for analyzing community structure in complex networks. So the Q here is a modularity of a graph where A is its adjacency matrix, D is the degrees, and omega I is the class label associated with the node I. So basically, the intuition for this formula is that it quantifies the extent of community structure or modular structure of the graph in comparison to a random graph with the same degree distribution. So the positive values, the more clustered the graph; negative values, it's anti-clustered. That is, there are between class edges are more prominent than within class edges if its Q is negative. So modularity of a graph, like we saw earlier, so each graph here corresponds to individual features. So modularity of the graphs can tell us like how relevant or a particular feature is. So it's what we refer to as a feature's global relevance. That is, how well does it classify taking all the instances together. But like we saw earlier in the illustration, it is also possible to infer the local relevance with respect to each instance. That is, whether or not a particular feature is useful for that particular instance. So in order to do that, we rewrite the modularity expression as a sum across the samples. Here it's not important to go into the details of the math, but the basic idea here is that we can express the modularity measure as a sum across the instances, which is where the contribution from each instance is this quantity here, the degree of the node, and a quantity uij, which is as specified in equation 6. So what does this capture? This essentially says that D is always a positive quantity. Depending upon whether or not U is a positive quantity, the node either contributes positively to the overall modularity, or that is, it is well clustered in the graph, or it contributes negatively to the overall modularity, that is, it cannot be classified by that particular feature. So let us look at it in more detail. So the uij, that is what assigned by sample xi to the feature fj, or the node I in the graph gj, is nothing but is considered as the node. So it's basically comprised of the within class degree, the between class degree, and the overall degree. So and the capital DK here, it kind of captures the relative density of the nodes class in the overall graph. So ignoring DK, the capital DK for a moment, what the uij essentially captures is that it's higher when the within class degree exceeds the between class degree. And the relative density kind of modulates that threshold, like when it is considered positive. I mean, to what extent should the within class clustering be stronger than the between class clustering?
Lilidhi, hi. How are you? I have one question, if I may. How this architecture is relevant to the contrastive learning approach? Like, do you have any idea like how this is similar to contrastive learning? Because there also we do kind of in between class, and so basically intra-class and inter-class, right? That's what you are talking about.
That's right. But I believe that, like, if I recall correctly, I'm not very familiar with contrastive learning. But is it like, so we train the network such that so there is higher similarity within classes and
Yes.
lower
Yeah.
similarity between classes?
Yeah, but you are using some kernels, but there you can do unsupervised and supervised. You can also do probabilistic distribution distances like divergences, right? You can also calculate the divergences and minimize the divergences between class and maximize other classes or something.
But I believe that their goal would be a bit different, because they would be considering the entire feature space in order to evaluate those similarities. Here we are interested in like looking at individual features and seeing which of them are actually relevant for the problem and which of them aren't.
Okay, got it. Thanks a lot.
So
Thank you.
no problem. Thank you. So the instance voting scheme that we saw earlier is like, this is an illustrative example. For example, let us consider this very simple feature which has this separable class distributions. If we compute the corresponding instance votes by first representing this as a graph and then using the formula we saw earlier, we see that so these are 1,000 samples from this distribution. So for each sample, we see that as we move away from the classification boundary, the instance vote magnitude increases, and in the region of the overlap, the instance votes take negative votes, suggesting that this feature is not useful for classifying the instances in this zone. On the other hand, when we consider an irrelevant feature, that is with exactly overlapping in this case, class densities, we see that the instance votes are close to 0, and for all the instances. So this suggests that it's not useful for classifying any of them. So let's So now that we have the instance voting matrix, so the instance voting matrix is of the same size as the feature matrix. That is, we have a vote from every instance to the feature. So next we use these instance votes to perform feature selection. But before we go there, does anyone have any other questions? Okay. In that case, let's proceed. So every vote here quantifies the extent to which the feature is useful for classification of a particular instance. We pose feature selection akin to the set covering problem. That is, we seek to select a subset of the features such that a majority of the instances are covered, or in other words, that they are well classified. So this is the generalized maximum coverage problem, which is in computer science, which is an NP-hard problem. Here we adopt a greedy heuristic search algorithm. The intuition for the proposed approach is that given that some features are already selected, the samples that are not covered by the earlier features have a higher priority to be served, or which are not covered by any of the previous features. We should be able to classify them. We should select a feature so as to classify such instances. So this is quantified in terms of something that we introduce later, that is the priority coverage. Let us look at the mathematical details of this intuition. So we have the feature matrix, and we compute the voting matrix from the feature matrix like we discussed earlier. Here the columns of the voting matrix correspond to the votes assigned by all the instances to the jth feature. In order to perform feature selection, we maintain a priority vector which is updated at every step. So if it is of the same size as the number of instances, and it reflects the current priority for the number of instances for each of the instances. That is, if a particular instance is not covered by any of the earlier features, it has a high priority. The priority coverage is defined as like in the inner product of the current priority vector and the vote vector of the incoming feature. So the larger the priority coverage, it is able to the incoming feature is able to better classify the high priority samples. So this is the overall algorithm. So initially we set uniform priority. We assign uniform priority to all the samples, and we have a empty selected set. Then we iteratively update through the equations in 8 to 11. So first at the kth step of feature selection, we compute the priority coverage for all the features. We select the feature with the highest priority coverage from the remaining set. We append the selected feature to the set of already selected features, and then we update the priority. That is, in order to update the priority, it's just a subtraction of the previous priority vector and the vote vector of the selected feature. This is in order to ensure that this is a non-negative quantity. We have this like max function here. Okay. This method is referred to as the conditional priority coverage maximization. That is, we are trying to maximize the priority coverage at every step of the feature selection. The computational complexity of the proposed approach is mainly in the instance voting scheme. That is where it is quadratic in the number of samples and linear in the number of features. And these two here are in the search strategy, the computational cost in the search strategy. Before we go to the experimental results, does anyone have any questions? In order to while evaluating the performance of the proposed approach, we also compare it with existing approaches. We do not have time to go into the details of the approaches, but I can give a brief summary of what what they're doing. We have univariate approaches where individual features are first ranked and then selected. So they do not consider the redundancy between the features. And the mutual information based approaches, which are considered the state of the art, they address, sorry, they can address both relevance and redundancy of the features. And we also have graph based approaches. These are modularity based approaches, which try to, they basically work like initially consider graphs for all the features. Then at every step of the feature selection, they go for higher and higher dimensional graphs and evaluate the graph modularity in order to quantify the relevance of d-dimensional feature subsets. Because of the graph construction involved at every step, they are known to be very computationally costly. And CPCM is the proposed approach. In our experiments, we first normalize the features and use sigma is equal to 1 in our Gaussian kernel. These are the various classifiers
Hello?
used.
Lilith?
Hello? Yes,
Yeah, can I go to the previous slide?
sure.
Yeah, here in that KFS, GFS, you have used KNN graph with k equals to 2. So k equals to 2, only 2 neighbors, won't it affect the like accuracy of the training model, the testing model?
That
Because
is
one
right,
could
actually.
be like the true sample and one could be suppose the false sample or the negatively rated sample. So that will create an havoc. So like it won't exactly go to the correct sample.
That's right. But what's happening here is that this is a different approach. This is not like the proposed approach, but one of the existing methods in the literature. And in for their particular case, they have this. So the parameter setting was as suggested by them because they showed that their performance does not change a lot with k.
Okay, okay.
Okay. But in order to like account for the difference in like the graph construction, I just considered the weighted graph as well. That is nothing but with the Gaussian graph. So that is the G.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So these are the various classifiers considered for the classification performance. In order to keep the results more compact, most of the results here are shown with the nearest neighbor and the SVM classifier. And the classification performance was evaluated using 10 cross validation, tenfold cross validation repeated 10 times. The performance metric is the balanced error rate, which is the mean of misclassification rate across classes. Lower the BER, the better the performance. This metric was chosen because it's insensitive to the class key. And we also consider how the stability of the selected features, that is, it quantifies how robust is the feature selection algorithm to the data variations. So this quantity here computes basically the similarity of the selected feature subsets, selected feature subsets from the fold data and that selected using the kth subset of the data samples. That is the folds of the cross validation. So this is averaged across, like, since we have 10 cross 10 cross validation, this is averaged across like 100 folds. So stability takes values in the range 0 to 1, and higher the stability, the better. First of all, let's look at the results on synthetic data. So we simulated a synthetic data set with 10 groups of useful features and 20 groups of irrelevant features. And each group comprises correlated features, and the individual feature groups are independent. And here the groups exhibit a graded importance with respect to the class concept. That is, the features in group 1 are more relevant for classification than those in group 2 and so on. and G11 to G30 are the irrelevant features. So we vary the number of features in each group, and this is a binary classification problem. So these are the results of classification performance by varying the number of features in each group parameter. So N here is the overall number of features that we have. And what we are showing here is a balanced error rate. So the lower the better. So in these cases, it is seen that in all the experimental conditions that we have here, the proposed approach CPCM outperforms the rest. Next, we look at the stability performance. In the stability performance, so higher the better. And we say that the univariate approaches, that is the ones in the lavender and purple, are perform the best, and the proposed approach comes next, followed by MRMR. So in order to see why do we have these results, we look at where the features are being selected from. When we consider a random feature selection, that is, we are just randomly selecting a subset of features, then those features are from across all feature groups. For the univariate approaches, that is the relief F and spec, these features we see that they select from the useful features prominently, that is the groups 1 to 10, and they suppress the irrelevant features very effectively. However, the reason for their poor classification performance is that they cannot address the redundancy issues. So at the same time, they're very redundant with respect to each other. On the other hand, the mutual information based approaches, they are able to select both from the highly relevant and the weakly relevant feature groups, but they have this problem of selecting the irrelevant feature groups. Similarly, for the graph modularity based approaches, so in this case, it is seen that as compared to the other multivariate approaches, the proposed algorithm here suppresses the irrelevant features better, and while also selecting features from both strongly relevant as well as weakly relevant feature groups. So these are some benchmark datasets, which are mostly cancer microarray datasets with a large number of features as compared to the number of instances. This is a result of classification performance averaged across all the datasets. So the lower the BER, the better. Here we see that multiple methods perform comparably. The proposed approach, and it performs comparable to the state-of-the-art mutual information-based approaches. Again, the stability performance, this is similar to what we saw earlier, with the univariate approaches performing best and followed by the proposed and the MRMR approach. This is a comparison of the timing performance of the various algorithms on the various datasets. So we see that the proposed approach, ignore the IVC for the moment. So this proposed approach falls somewhere in between. It is not as expensive as the graph modularity based approaches, but it is actually expensive than the state-of-the-art mutual information based approaches. And so these are ordered according to the sample size. So those at the top have a large, these are ordered according to the number of features. So as the number of features increase, it takes more and more time. So in the next section, we evaluate the performance of the proposed feature selection algorithm with respect to various experimental conditions. We'll look at each of them in turn. So firstly, we have class Q. So the instance votes are derived from the graph modularity, which one of the disadvantages of this measure is that it is sensitive to class Q. So here we see that as the relative size of the module size is varied, the graph modularity changes, even though the density is same. That is, the within class density and the between class density is the same. So here, for when we have like one very small module and the other is large, so we see that the modularity is almost close to zero. That is, it cannot detect that clustering structure. And this also has an adverse impact on the instance votes. So it skews the instance votes as we see here. So in order to address the class imbalance, we perform a kind of algebraic oversampling of the minority classes. So we simulate uniform distribution of samples. That is, we are assuming the oversampling of the minority classes, but we do not need to perform this oversampling explicitly. So what we are interested in is the graph representation. So oversampling of the data samples is equivalent to just repeating the entries of the adjacency matrix as shown here. So all the shaded portions are actually just the repeated graph edges from the original one. If theta I is the oversampling factor, it can be shown that all the constituents of the vote equation, that instance vote equation, can be expressed in terms of theta I and the original degree in the adjacency matrix. So with those modified expressions, again we have a similar expression for computing the instance votes. So since this can be performed algebraically without any explicit oversampling of the data, it avoids the additional computational cost. So next we look at whether or not this the balanced definition is useful. These are some data sets which have a high class Q in the among the benchmark data sets that we considered. In all the cases, we see that the balanced approach either performs comparably to the earlier one or it outperforms the other one. So this difference is especially prominent in the breast cancer and the lung cancer data sets. Okay, before we move on, any other questions? Next, in our earlier experiments, we fixed the value of the scaling parameter in the Gaussian kernel, but this also can have impact on the instance votes. So, a low value of sigma it leads to noisy estimates of the instance votes. On the other hand, a high value of sigma, it can lead to smoother estimates, but it masks the clustering structure. So the choice of sigma is a trade-off between whether or not we can detect the clustering structure and the noisiness of the instance votes estimates. Just showing a noise example here. So we have a relevant feature, and we see that as we increase the value of sigma, we see that even though this is quite well clustered, as we increase the value of sigma, the instance votes are close to zero. That is, it masks the clustering structure. On the other hand, when we have this in the irrelevant feature here in the B part of the plot, for low values of sigma, the estimates are very noisy and it's difficult to say whether or not the feature is actually useful. But for higher values of sigma, the votes are closer to zero, suggesting its irrelevance. So it's kind of a balancing act that we have here. Just by varying the parameter sigma and seeing how the performance varies here. So the black line is the one that we were showing earlier, that is the sigma is equal to 1 case, and the rest are the distribution of the performance in that range, in that particular range. So again, we see that the most explicit thing is here is that the blue shaded portion of the graphs, that is when sigma has high values, that is when it performs the worst. In the red portion of the red shaded portions, that is when sigma is around that 0.5 to 1.5 range, that is when it performs best in most of the data sets. Again, just for clarity, looking at the average performance across all the data sets, we see that lower values of sigma have this almost comparable performance, but when we increase sigma beyond a certain range, it can deteriorate the classification performance on the left. But surprisingly, and it increasing the value of sigma improves the stability of performance. As we saw earlier, this is because of the smoother estimates of the instance votes. So again, we have a trade-off between the classification and the stability performance here. However, if we consider the range of the stability performance, it's not a very large range. So even like a stability of 0.8 is considered a good value. Next, we evaluate the performance with respect to changes in sample size. So investigated performance by varying the percentage of training data available. First, so here we have fixed the number of selected features. Here we see that as if the performance improves, that is, we have lower and lower error for all the feature selection algorithms when we have more amount of training data. But irrespective of the amount of training data available, the proposed approach performs better than the others. Again, the relative ordering of the stability performance is the same as the earlier, with the univariate approaches at the top. Next, with respect to, we consider additive feature noise added to both the training and testing data at various SNR. Here again, we observe a similar thing, that is that the classification performance improves with increase in SNR, and the proposed approach performs relatively better than the other approaches at all SNR. Again, similar results for the stability performance. Let me take a moment to say here that the reason for the superior performance of the proposed approach, both in the case of limited training data, the case we saw earlier, and in the presence of feature noise, is mainly because of the graph representation of the data, which kind of smooths the effects of these noises. Next, we consider the effect of label noise. Label noise is when there are some corrupted or mislabeled instances in the training data. So we simulated the presence of random label noise by corrupting a specified proportion of the training instances, and experiments are performed at various levels of corruption. The results for the effect of label noise on various feature selection algorithms is a bit more nuanced, and it depends on which classifier we are using. Let us first look at the KNN classifier. So in the KNN classifier, if you look at the y-axis, the range on the y-axis, we see that the error increases as we are increasing the proportion of the training data that's corrupted. And when we look at which of the algorithms performs best, it looks like it depends upon the number of features. But if we consider in terms of the absolute lowest value of the BER, the ReliefF algorithm performs the best here. On the other hand, when we consider the SVM classifier, the performance is actually deteriorating. It's kind of overfitting in the presence of label noise. So, in summary here, the ReliefF and the KNN combination performs best in the presence of label noise among the experimental conditions considered. The reason for this could be that they are both local methods, which makes them kind of more robust to label noise. So the overall conclusions. In this work, we propose feature selection as a set covering problem. It's based on instance words derived from the graph representation of the features. It addresses various challenges for small sample size, high dimensional data. It achieved lowest misclassification rate on various benchmark datasets with reasonably good stability. It was able to suppress irrelevant features more effectively than the state-of-the-art mutual information-based approaches. It performed well even in the presence of limited training data, and it was shown to be robust to feature noise but sensitive to label noise. Some limitations. One of the main limitations is the parameter selection or the choice of the scaling parameter sigma. So we saw that the choice influences in our case it was in the cases we consider it was shown to be stable around that 0.5 to 1.5 range, but it would be interesting to see whether this can be empirically determined in a more rigorous way, and also can we actually automate that parameter selection problem. And also the other limitation is with respect to large sample data. The proposed approach is suitable for small sample size, but the cost of graph construction becomes very large when we have very large number of samples. In these cases, it is suggested that we use alternate graph representations other than the weighted undirected graph that we considered here, like the anchor graph. The anchor graph is, instead of computing the pairwise similarities between all pairs of instances, what it does is that it first clusters the data into some number of clusters, and instead of estimating all the edges, it just estimates the edges of the nodes to the cluster centers. It's also possible to consider alternate voting and search strategies. For example, these could be based on other heuristic approaches for the set covering problem, or one alternate search strategy was also considered in a follow-up work which considered the parametric relationship between the sign distance around the classification boundary and the instance words. The instance voting approaches can also be extended for unsupervised feature selection and some problems such as kernel selection, multiple kernel combining. A few applications of feature selection where this could be useful, that is the small sample size high dimensional data problems like classification of brain networks, classification of biomedical signals, so on. Thank you. I'll take any questions or any comments.
Yeah, thank you, Priti. We have a few questions. One is from Suparna. Can you repeat the slides from 8 to 10?
Let me just go back here.
Yeah.
So the instance voting scheme?
Yes.
Okay, let me just, okay. Yeah. So the basic idea of the instance voting scheme, like I said earlier, is that every instance has a local perspective, or that is, the features can either be considered relevant for that particular instance or not. Or this is like kind of a local relevance concept. So the votes essentially represent this kind of a local relevance. So what we do here is that we represent every feature as a graph whose nodes correspond to the instances, and the edge weights quantify the pairwise proximity. The pairwise proximity, we are using the Gaussian kernel, and so again the idea here is that clustered graphs are more relevant features result in clustered graphs, while irrelevant features do not exhibit any such structure. Not going to the graph construction set. So once we have the graphs for every feature, we use the modularity measure. So the modularity is a single scalar, that is for every graph we have an associated modularity measure. So what the modularity tells us is that how clustered the graph is, or in other words, how relevant that particular feature is. But we are not just interested in the overall relevance of the feature. We are also interested in how it relates to the individual instances. That is that particular feature useful for the individual instances or not, like we saw in the first illustration. So here we see that both feature 1 and feature 2, they have this well clustered structure. So they are kind of relevant features for the classification concept, but they are relevant only for a subset of the instances. That is, they are not relevant for all of them. So what we would like to know is that which is the subset of instances for which they are relevant. So in order to do that, what we are doing is that the modularity measure is basically just it can be written as a, instead of like earlier we had this double sum, where this sum is basically, it's considering like how strong is the connection between the nodes within the classes. This is the sum across the instances. This is a double summation across the instances. Here we are just rewriting that expression as like we have this k indexes the classes, and the next summation indexes the samples within each class. So that is just a algebraic manipulation of the modularity expression. So what this tells us is that how much do the individual samples in each class contribute to the overall modularity. So whenever like a feature is relevant, it receives positive votes or positive Uij from a large number of them. Whenever a feature is irrelevant, the modularity is close to 0, and this Uij would be close to 0 for a large number of the instances. On the other hand, if a feature is like actually anti-clustered, that is, there are more between class connections than within class connections, in those cases the modularity would be negative. So Uij, or this quantity, is basically defined for every node in the graph of a particular graph that corresponds to the feature. So very intuitively, it can be just understood as whether or not this within class degree, DIS, is greater than the between class degree. And we can forget dk for the moment. It is just kind of modulating with respect to the densities of the classes. So whenever this within class degree is greater than the between class degree, the votes take positive values, or it suggests that feature fj is useful for classifying the instance xi.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense? Any particular issue that you would like me to discuss further?
No, only for those two slides were sufficient. The next question is from Debayan Bhattacharya. Which method is best to classify AEG signals according to your perspective?
Okay. That I can't say that I'm an expert with respect to like EEG signal classification, but I did work on EEG and EEG signals for a while. So what I've observed is that it's very much data dependent, and domain knowledge helps a lot, definitely, because that would help you in choosing which features, like in the choice of features. My suggestion always would be that like it's always, because we have all these feature selection algorithms, our instinct is to like first compute as many features as possible, and like different kinds of features, linear features, non-linear features, probably transform features and so many things, and then apply a feature selection algorithm. But my instinct, that's the instinct. But my suggestion is always that we first choose the features, which features to extract based on some form of domain knowledge. For example, epilepsy, we have this highly spiking data, which makes a particular kind of features more useful. So, for example, say maybe wavelet transform and this the time frequency features and so on. So, and then applying a feature selection algorithm is always better in order to maybe like even like fine tune those features. But if we have this large number of features which are actually a large irrelevant set, the model would be highly prone to overfitting.
Okay. I have a question regarding the same. Currently, I'm working on dimensional reduction, and there, what I was experiencing was the data which currently I'm working in I have extracted some features, and they are mostly the separation between the features is very less. I mean, they are mostly overlapped. So how do we even if we suppose use the feature selection methods and remove some of the irrelevant features, still the features are going to be overlapped. Like if you apply TSNE or UMAP on that data, and we find that when you plot the features, we find that the data still overlap. So how can we address this issue in terms of feature selection while classifying the classes?
I think again it would be that so whether or not these features are actually relevant. So
Yes,
and
yes, they are
maybe
relevant. Yes.
they are relevant. Okay. So maybe there is some form of like common factors that are contributing to this overlap. Maybe the first step would be to regress out those common factors and then like go for classification.
Okay.
Or maybe like what I'm trying to say is that maybe this is like maybe a latent space model might be helpful.
Okay, because in dimension reduction, what we do is we usually calculate some projection matrix or projection
Yes.
vector, and we try to transform it into some other subspace so that interclass distance would be high and the intraclass distance would be low. So the same classes are clustered together, and the distinct classes are very plotted far apart. So is that the case in feature selection, or can we do some apply some algorithm so that the interclass and intraclass distance would be affected in feature selection?
That is like the feature selection is like almost like a twin of the dimensionality reduction problem. There we are applying a transform. Here we are trying to choose a subset. The only advantage of feature selection, of course, it depends on the application, is that we get to know which of the features are useful. So it helps in the interpretability. But like one thing that comes to mind is that I was just thinking of something. Okay. So, yes. So there might be like if your features are actually overlapping, but they are relevant. You know that for a fact. It might be that the relevance that we are looking for is not in the individual features, but groups of features in the sense that like they have this higher order dependency. That is individually they may not be relevant, but when you take them all together, like then they are relevant. But which groups to combine, like which groups to actually take, that itself is a combinatorial problem, because if you have n features and you need to choose a group of like k, it would be nck possibilities of choosing the
But
groups.
doesn't this
So
heuristic approach will take a lot of computational time and increase the
no, no,
complexity as well?
no, I'm not suggesting to go for that. What I'm saying is that there are many kinds of feature selection algorithms. Some of them which explicitly were able to handle this higher dependencies problem. Like that is, they can look for these higher order dependencies. So instead of taking all those combinations, they try to get a heuristic of how to go about grouping the features. I think something like that may be helpful.
Okay. And
I could maybe, like, if you're interested in like particular feature selection algorithms, maybe I could send out some references like which address these problems or which actually talk about these problems.
sure, sure. I think other students also will be getting help in using these references. So do send those references. And the other part of the question was like if the feature size is suppose like to like 100 something, then the feature selection is not that much time taking. But what if the application is like suppose face recognition, in that I calculate face maps, eigenfaces and Laplacian maps. So in that we calculate the SVD and we chose the best eigenvectors. So the size of each eigenvector itself is in terms of like thousands. So if we chose even 10 eigenvectors also from that image, so if we having 10 into 1000, it will be around 10,000 like features. So how do you address that issue when the dimension is really very high?
Like, I think 10,000 actually is not very high. 10,000 is
Then I just
considered
give an example. So like when the
because
features
for
are
most of the
really
data, like because the scale is important. I mean, like, is it a 10,000 or is it a 100,000? 100,000 is definitely, it's really, really large.
okay.
Like, so that matters. Like, so if it is actually in the range of like 10,000, 15,000, or maybe even like 25,000, I think even like the state of the art approaches that you have here, the mutual information based approaches, they do not take that long.
Okay.
Like, for example, you see here that this is for the case for the 15,000 features. This takes around maybe just somewhere between just 1 to 10 seconds.
Okay. Do you have any references for the feature selection method based on mutual information?
Yeah, actually, they have the code available for this, the mutual information. So,
Okay.
yeah, I can share that as well.
Okay. Okay.
MRMR is considered like the standard.
Okay. Please do share that mutual information code as well. Okay. Yeah, that's from my side. Anybody else has any questions? You can unmute or you can type in the chat section also. Okay, I think we don't have any
Hello.
further questions. Okay, yes, yes.
Yeah, actually, I have one question. Once you have applied this feature selection method, so how your model complexity influence? I mean, can you comment on that one? So you have used different models, right? So will it be? I mean, can you check the experimentally? Like, will the model complexity will increase or lower it on the point?
This like, are you talking about the time taken for the feature selection, or
No.
on
Once you have done the pre-processing, because feature selection is like pre-processing, right?
Right.
Once you have done the pre-processing, so once if I'm going for the model selection, so at that time, so how we have the guarantee that it is overfit or underfit, right?
I think that would be like irrespective of which feature selection algorithm you're using or not using at all. I think that would be maybe taken care of whether like the validation performance, looking at the validation performance and seeing like and trying to assess the overfitting and underfitting. I mean, if the model
Yes,
performs well on the training but poorly
I mean,
on the validation,
before,
is it?
actually, my question is like before feature selection, I mean, irrelevant features are reduced. Okay. So before that one, if you perform the experiment on the models, and after your
Oh,
feature selection,
okay. I
so you will
understood.
perform. So in that case, is there any difference in the model complexity?
Model complexity definitely, and as well as like the performance of the model. Like if we have all these irrelevant features, the performance would be
No, not
much poorer.
the performance. Actually, model size, like
Model
number of
size,
parameters in the sense.
yes. Because if we consider the simple, like the simple SVM, uh, so with the linear kernel, so we have this the W transpose X is our hyperplane. So the X is the feature vector. So the size of the feature vector matters, right? So the larger number of features you have, the more number of parameters your SVM has to train for. Like the size of W will also be large.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Lilith. Thank you on behalf of IEEE Singapore Society IIT Kharagpur. Thank you for accepting our request and gave such a wonderful talk. I'm sure this talk will help all the researchers and the students in their career, and they will use it in their research work as well. I would request you to kindly share all the references and the presentation as well, if you can, and the course which you just mentioned with all of us. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank
It's
you.
good to have all of you here. Thank you.
Thank you all the attendees for attending this lecture. I wish you very good in your future life and very all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.